Hey everyone, welcome back to Revenge Reloaded. The moment my father whispered in the hallway that I was too embarrassing to attend my brother's engagement party to a millionaire heiress, your messy life will humiliate us in front of elite in-laws, and told me to stay home while they packed designer clothes for the luxury resort Gala, I nodded quietly. What they had no clue about was that those same elite in-laws had been my secret clients for months, trusting me to save their empire with data magic, and that at that glittering New Year's Eve party, my framed photo on their wall of innovation would make them scream my name in shock while my family watched their perfect image shatter. My name is Nora Bennett, and I'm 30 now. A few weeks ago, I heard my own father say I was too embarrassing to be seen with my brother's new in-laws. I was standing in the hallway holding a mug of coffee when his voice cut through from the living room. Your brother's in-laws are elite. You'll humiliate us. Do you understand, Nora? Don't ruin this. He said it like I was a problem to be managed, not his daughter. My brother had just gotten engaged to a millionaire heiress, the kind you see in glossy magazines, and suddenly my messy data nerd life in Austin was a threat to their shiny new image. They didn't care that I spent nights rebuilding hotel revenue models and fixing broken booking systems. To them, I was just the awkward girl who asks too many questions at dinner and never knows which fork to use. So while they packed suitcases full of designer outfits for a New Year's Eve engagement party at a luxury resort, I was told to stay home and keep things simple. They didn't want me at the party. They didn't want me anywhere near the people they called elite. And they definitely didn't want anyone knowing I was part of the family. Have you ever been treated like the family embarrassment, only to find out you're the one holding all the power? Stay with me, because the way this party flipped from humiliation to payback is something you'll want to hear until the very end. I didn't grow up thinking I was embarrassing. As a kid, I just thought I was different. While other kids at family barbecues ran around the yard, I was the one sitting at the plastic table counting how many hot dogs people took and wondering why Uncle Mike always left early. I asked questions that made adults uncomfortable. Why do you invest in that company if their debt is so high? Why do you say we're fine with money if mom works 2 jobs? People laughed, then slowly stopped inviting me into conversations. My parents, Thomas and Karen Bennett, would pull me aside afterward. Nora, can you please just be normal for once? Smile. Talk about school. Don't interrogate people. Meanwhile, my older brother Ethan was everything they wanted. He knew exactly when to laugh, when to compliment someone's watch, when to ask about golf. At his high school graduation dinner, I remember standing too close to the waiter, asking about tips and wages, and bumping into a tray of marinara sauce. Red splattered all over a guest's white dress. The whole table went silent. My mother's face turned the color of that sauce. Thomas grabbed my arm so hard it hurt and hissed, "This is exactly what I mean. You don't belong in these settings." After that, I stopped trying to fit in at their kind of party. Instead, I buried myself in numbers. In high school, I taught myself spreadsheets for fun. In college, while others posted frat party pictures, I ran A/B tests on website layouts for a tiny bed and breakfast that couldn't afford a real agency. I studied business analytics and computer science, discovering that I could take messy data and turn it into clean answers. Hotels and guest houses started coming to me with the same problem: too many empty rooms and not enough guests. I'd sit in my tiny dorm room, staring at charts at 3 a.m., tweaking prices and ad strategies until the graphs finally turned upward. Back home in the Austin suburbs, though, none of that mattered. When I mentioned landing my first client, Mom smiled politely and said, "So, you're still doing that online thing?" Dad waved it off. "It's temporary. She'll get a real job eventually." Ethan went straight into law, joined a corporate firm, and instantly became the golden boy again. My parents introduced him as future partner at a big Dallas firm, our pride and joy. When I showed up to dinners in jeans after 12-hour consulting days for 3 small hotels, Mom whispered, "Could you at least pretend you're not working from your bedroom?" At some point, something snapped. If they never saw my value in the room, I would build it quietly outside. I registered Bennett Analytics and started saying no to parties where I'd be the punchline. I chose data over dinner tables and dashboards over small talk. While they polished Ethan's image, I learned something they had no idea about. In the right hands, numbers can change the entire fate of a company. The question was, what would happen the day my numbers collided with their obsession with status? The first time Harrington and Vale came into my life, it was because someone was desperate. It was a sticky Austin afternoon, and I was half asleep over a spreadsheet when an email popped up: "Urgent, mid-size resort chain in trouble. Can you help?" A small agency I freelanced for was panicking. The client's bookings had crashed post-pandemic. Luxury brand, big budgets, even bigger expectations. They needed someone to make sense of the mess, fast. The client was Harrington and Vale Resorts. The logo name hit me only after I opened the attachment. Hours later, my phone rang. Graham Harrington. A measured voice said, frayed at the edges. I was told you can pull numbers out of fire. I sat up straighter. No camera, he added quickly. The connection's awful. Let's keep it audio. That suited me just fine. I never liked being seen. Over the next hour, he laid everything out. Their flagship properties were half empty. Competitors were eating market share. The last agency had burned through a 7-figure budget with almost nothing to show for it. We need someone who actually understands data, he said, not just pretty presentations. Someone who can dive into our systems, tell us what's broken, and fix it. I should have been intimidated, but instead I felt something else, clarity. This was just a larger version of the same puzzle I'd been solving for years. I asked for access to their booking systems, ad accounts, and website analytics. Within days, I was combing through years of numbers, spotting patterns no one on their team had noticed. Pricing was static in a market that had become insanely dynamic. Ads were targeting the wrong age groups in the wrong cities. The website was bleeding potential guests at checkout because the mobile form was a nightmare. So I built a plan. I tested dynamic pricing tied to demand curves, shifting rates by tiny percentages based on seasonality and real-time search data. I shut off half the useless ad campaigns and rerouted the budget into high-intent search traffic and targeted social audiences. I mapped packages for remote workers, staycation families, and people looking for long weekends within driving distance instead of international trips. It was riskier than the safe reports they were used to seeing. I told them that. Graham paused on the phone, then said, if your numbers are right, we've got nothing left to lose. Do it. For the first round of tests, I even put part of my own consulting fee on the line, structuring it as performance-based. If it failed, I'd make almost nothing. If it worked, we both won. The first month, the graphs barely moved. The second month, they benched sharply upward. Booking rates climbed. Revenue followed. The board stopped breathing down Graham's neck. One late evening, Graham called me, his voice lighter than I'd ever heard it. I have no idea what you've done for us, Nora, he said. Our team is putting together a case study wall at the main resort to celebrate the turnaround. We want your face on it, your name, everything. I laughed and told him I preferred to stay behind the scenes. He insisted, so I sent a professional headshot just in case. When the internal mock-up came through, I opened the file and saw my photo in a gold frame with the caption, Data Growth Strategist, Nora Bennett. I closed the file before I could think too much about it. To me, it was just another quiet win, one my family didn't need to know about. I didn't realize then that the same revived resort chain would soon host a glittering charity gala. A gala where my older brother Ethan would meet a woman named Leah Harrington, a millionaire heiress, and where my parents would fall in love with her long before they ever accepted me. Ethan called me about 3 months after the first big Harrington and Vale turnaround. His voice had that bright tone I recognized from every time he thought he was leveling up. Hey, want to grab coffee? I've got news. We met at a sleek downtown spot, the kind with concrete floors and overpriced cortados. He walked in wearing a tailored suit, even though it was a Saturday. His easy smile was plastered on his face. I could tell before he said a word that whatever he was about to tell me would make our parents very proud. I'm engaged, he said, dropping the word between us like a trophy. To Leah. Leah Harrington. The name hit my brain like a glitch. Harrington. As in Harrington and Vale? I asked carefully. Yeah, he said, eyes shining. Her family owns this insane resort empire. They host charity events, political fundraisers, all the time. Dad is freaking out, in a good way. I forced a smile. I'd spent months inside that empire's numbers, saving it from collapse, while Ethan was always 10 steps behind whatever image he was curating. That's great, I said. I'm happy for you. He talked about the proposal, the ring, how our parents reacted. Thrilled, of course. This was the kind of connection they had always dreamed of, a gilded doorway into a world they admired from magazines and TV. It wasn't until Ethan finished that his expression shifted, like he'd been saving the uncomfortable part for last. So, there's a New Year's Eve engagement party, he said, tracing the rim of his cup, at one of Leia's family resorts. It's going to be huge. Donors, business partners, a few politicians. Big deal. I nodded, waiting for the part where he asked if I needed help booking flights or choosing a dress. Instead, he cleared his throat. Look, Nora. I think it's better if you sit this one out. I stared at him. Sit it out? It's a very particular crowd, he said slowly. Leia's parents, their friends. They're used to a certain environment. Used to what? I asked, my voice sharper. He lifted his hands like a shield. You ask heavy questions. You make people uncomfortable. You don't really play the game. Do you hear yourself? I asked. Dad thinks it might be too stressful for you, he added quickly. Too stressful for me, or too embarrassing for you? He winced. That told me everything I needed to know. Nora, I work with hotels and resorts for a living, I wanted to say. I know more about the people you're trying to impress than you do. But instead, I stayed quiet as he kept talking. We only get one first impression with Leia's family, he said. They're elite. Used to certain manners. Certain optics. Mom and Dad are already nervous. It's safer if you don't come. Safer, like I was some unpredictable storm that might ruin his big night. I laughed, but it came out flat. So I'm not invited to my own brother's engagement party because I don't fit the optics. It's not like that, he muttered. We'll do a smaller family dinner later. Just us. I know you love me, he added quickly. This is just strategy. When I got home, my parents were in the living room, voices low and urgent. I stopped in the hallway, unseen. Your brother's in-laws are elite, Dad was saying. Nora can't be rambling about money or calling out someone's business model. She'll humiliate us. Karen sighed. She doesn't mean to, Tom. But this is Ethan's doorway into something better. We can't let her ruin it. The words landed harder than any physical slap. Upstairs, my laptop was still open to the Harrington and Unveiled dashboard, the same logo that would be embossed on Ethan's New Year's Eve invitations. They were terrified I'd embarrass them in front of the very people whose fortunes I had helped rebuild. I closed my eyes and took a slow breath. Fine, I thought. If they want to hide me, let them. They had no idea how small their version of this story really was. They thought this party was about optics. They didn't realize that somewhere amid all that champagne and glitter, my name was already hanging on their in-laws' walls, waiting to blow their perfect strategy apart. New Year's Eve came faster than I wanted it to. The week between Christmas and the 31st felt like limbo, like the world was holding its breath. My parents buzzed around the house talking about flights, outfits, and what gift would be appropriate for the Harringtons. Ethan even sent me a picture of the invitation once. Gold foil, embossed logos, everything gleaming. Wish you could come, he wrote, as if the decision hadn't been made deliberately without me. The morning of the party, I watched them leave for the airport in their best clothes. My mother wore a new dress she absolutely couldn't afford without putting something on a credit card. My father adjusted a tie he'd bought on sale but pretended was designer. They waved at me from the doorway, smiling like they were doing me a favor by letting me stay behind. When the Uber pulled away, the house went quiet in a way that pressed down on my chest. That night, while Austin glittered with rooftop fireworks and parties, I stayed in my apartment with takeout, my laptop open on the coffee table. I tried to turn on a movie, but my phone kept lighting up. Photos from my mother flooded in. Crystal chandeliers, marble staircases, champagne towers. Videos from Ethan showed a live band, confetti cannons, laughter spilling everywhere. Then a clip of Leia appeared, descending a grand staircase in a silver gown, like she'd stepped out of a magazine. In the background, I could hear my dad telling someone proudly, "That's my son up there. He's marrying into the Harrington family." I stared at the screen until the images blurred. They were inside the world they'd always worshipped, and they had made absolutely sure I was nowhere near it. I closed the photos and opened a different window. Harrington and Vale's year-end performance dashboard. Real-time booking numbers flickered across the screen. Occupancy rates climbed. Revenue bars filled in. The same brand my brother was celebrating with was actively thriving because of work I had done. An email notification popped up. Subject line, year-end update, special request. It was from Graham Harrington. I opened it, expecting a brief thank you. Instead, he'd written a full paragraph about how transformative the past year had been. How panic had turned into confidence. How the board had gone from questioning survival to planning expansion. You didn't just tweak ads, he wrote. You changed the way we understand our business. There was an attachment at the bottom labeled Wall of Innovation Concept. When I opened it, my breath caught. It was a mock-up of the entrance hall of one of their flagship resorts. A long wall lined with framed case studies, each highlighting a key turnaround story. At the center was my headshot. Cleaner, more confident than I felt in real life. Beneath it, a gold plaque read, Nora Bennett, Data Growth Strategist. The description summarized the recovery I'd led, dynamic pricing, demand-driven campaigns, post-pandemic stabilization. Guests would walk past that wall every time they entered, glasses clinking under chandeliers, my face watching silently from the center. Graham added, "We're planning to unveil this at a major partners and family event next season. Would love for you to be there in person." My phone buzzed again. Another photo from my mother. Ethan and Leia posed together under a rain of confetti. My parents smiled in the background, glowing. I imagined that wall existing somewhere they didn't even know about yet. My framed photo quietly contradicting every story they'd ever told about me being a disappointment. I replied to Graham with a simple yes. Then I set my phone down and leaned back on the couch, listening to fireworks crackle outside. They thought they had erased me from their world that night. What they didn't realize was that I'd finally found a world big enough where they couldn't erase me at all. Months after New Year's Eve, it felt like someone had quietly turned up the brightness on my life while my family kept acting like I was still sitting in the dark. Harrington and Vale signed a long-term contract, then another. Meetings expanded into talks about new properties, acquisitions, and international growth. Late-night calls turned into strategy sessions about opening resorts in California, then the Caribbean. I ran simulations on what would happen if pricing shifted during shoulder season, how demand curves would react, how brand perception could be protected while still maximizing revenue. My bank account reflected it too. I replaced my old hatchback with a reliable hybrid, fixed the leak in my bathroom ceiling, moved into a one-bedroom apartment that didn't feel like it might collapse during a thunderstorm. I did all of it quietly. No big announcements. No social media posts. I knew exactly how my parents would react if I tried to explain performance-based contracts or retention bonuses. They'd smile, nod, and ask if I'd thought about applying for a real job nearby. Meanwhile, Ethan's life looked like a highlight reel. My mom sent constant updates. Photos of him and Leia at wine tastings, charity balls, luxury retreats. Screenshots of articles mentioning the Harrington name with captions like, "Your brother was there last night." At Sunday dinners I still occasionally attended, the conversation revolved around wedding plans, guest lists, and how incredible it was that our family would soon belong to events where people wore tuxedos and talked about offshore accounts. Once, over meatloaf, Ethan said, "Graham is bringing in some kind of genius consultant for their data strategy. Guy's basically a wizard with numbers." I took a slow sip of water to hide my reaction. My mom looked impressed. "See, that's the kind of company you want to be around," she said. I wondered what she'd say if she knew that wizard had spent that morning arguing with Graham about whether to cap occupancy during holidays to protect long-term brand value. But I said nothing. I let them talk about proximity to power while I stayed busy actually building it. Then one early fall afternoon, an email from Graham's assistant made me sit up straighter. They were finalizing details for a combined partners and family gala at the Harrington flagship resort in Miami. A celebration of the year's turnaround in Ethan and Leia's engagement. Attached was the official invitation. Heavy, embossed, even through a screen. My name was printed near the top under strategic partners. Ethan's name appeared lower, under groom's family. For a long moment, I just stared. My parents hadn't said a word to me yet. I could already imagine how they'd frame it, how exclusive it was, how only the right people were invited, how somehow I still wouldn't quite fit. But this time, the Harringtons weren't inviting me as Ethan's awkward sister. They were inviting me as the person who had changed the trajectory of their business. I called Graham to confirm. His excitement was unmistakable. "We've been telling everyone about you," he said. "Can't wait to see their faces when they realize the person behind those numbers is real." At the Miami resort, marble floors gleamed beneath towering palms. Floral arrangements cost more than my first car. The air buzzed with money. I arrived early, not as Ethan's sister, but as a strategic partner. A coordinator handed me a badge with my name printed cleanly, Nora Bennett, Data Growth Strategist. Inside the foyer, the wall of innovation stretched across one side, just like the mock-up. Gold frames, soft lighting, case studies lining the wall. My photo sat near the center. My work, my name. For the first hour, I forgot about my family entirely. I talked numbers, laughed with board members, discussed expansion plans. I belonged. Then I heard my mother's voice float in from the lobby. "Oh wow, this place is incredible." I turned just enough to see them enter. My father's suit suddenly looked cheaper under the chandeliers. My mother clutched her bag like it might run away. Ethan and Leia walked ahead, confident. They didn't see me at first. A staff member stepped forward and smiled at me. "Ms. Bennett, Mr. Harrington would like you near the wall for the announcement." So instead of hiding, I stood just feet from my framed photo as my family crossed the room. Celeste tapped her glass. The room quieted. Tonight is about partnership, she said. About the people who held this company up when things looked impossible. She gestured toward the wall. People changed everything when we needed it most. She pointed directly at my photo. This is Nora Bennett. The silence that followed said more than any speech. Ethan's head snapped toward me. My parents froze. Graham added calmly, we never realized your daughter was our Nora. My mother stammered. She does some computer work. Without her, Graham replied, this party wouldn't exist. Later, in a quiet hallway, my mother whispered, you made us look like fools. No, I said softly. I just stopped hiding. That night, as applause filled the ballroom, I finally understood something I wish I'd known years earlier. The most powerful revenge isn't cruelty. It's choosing not to shrink anymore. If you've ever been the one your family tried to hide, remember this. Their inability to see your worth doesn't erase it. Thanks so much for watching. More of my most gripping stories are already on your screen. Click one now and don't miss the best part. You will love it. See you in the next story.